Freedom and equality are defining characteristics of liberalism. Then there is the other, possessions or property, including private property as defined by capitalism. Under capitalism, a single person can own something that the entire community needs, no matter how much that might damage the community, or keep the community poor and reliant on the owner. Those to the left of liberalism might argue that the sanctity of this private property contradicts the other two defining characteristics of liberalism. Capitalism does not create freedom, it creates a mandatory system of wage labor. Capitalism does not create equality. Those at the bottom of the economic hierarchy are less free to act than those at the top. Liberals do not see it that way, and instead claim that capitalism and liberalism achieve the most freedom and equality possible, and that there is simply no better way.
Cubans took to the streets in what the opposition has called the biggest anti-government protests in almost 3 decades.
The tipping points after 6 decades of communist rule are shortages of food and medicine exacerbated by the pandemic.
A perfect storm for anti-regime anger that spread rapidly as more Cubans recently gained access to the internet.
The government responded with a violent crackdown, arresting over 1,000 people. To this day, many remain behind bars.
This lady is showing me her government ration cards that she's kept for decades. Cubans use these cards to go to the storage houses to get their monthly rations.
El aceite que es menos cantidad, los granos que son menos, el azúcar que es menos, ni hay jabón de baño, ni de lavar, ni detergente. Bueno, cada día las menos cosas.
Vale, gracias. To see what the reality is like for locals, we traveled to Cuba. But because the island doesn't allow foreign journalists to operate freely in the country, we traveled as tourists and filmed on our phones.
We're inside a Venezuelan prison with the Minister for the Prison Service, Iris Varela. She is a close confidant of President Nicolás Maduro.
Puedo decirle que Venezuela es el mejor país del mundo.
¿Por qué? ¿Por qué?
Vean esto, vean cómo está la marcha y vean cómo viene la represión.
Le pegaron una bomba en la cara.
This was her cousin Johnny, a young man in high spirits on his way to anti-government protests. The video went viral, and little more than a day later, he was dead.
They dumped his body like he was an animal.
Se fueron a animar, prácticamente.
It was a targeted killing. Johnny had been dragged from a house by the paramilitary police.
So we're heading towards a court in Beijing where a prominent activist goes on trial today. Why? This is a public space.
Soon the situation violently escalated. Police and plainclothes men targeting us, taking away our phones and ID, and breaking the camera.
Yeah, you can't physically, they're physically manhandling us. They're physically manhandling me. This is a public space, I'm allowed to report. I'm allowed to report. We are reporters, we are reporting in a public space. Ow. Hey, do not physically manhandle us like this.
本集將會關閉，乘客必須立即離開，所有閘機現已開啟，出閘無需使用車票或飯盒空卡。停止廣播，由於發生嚴重事故，本站將關。This is an emergency. The station is closed.
It's China's National Day. Hong Kong is engulfed in protests. In the Chunwan neighborhood, a group of 15 protesters approach officers in riot gear. They start chasing and attacking one of the officers with umbrellas and what appear to be metal rods. From this angle, we see an officer running up to the chaos with his revolver already drawn. A shot rings out. He stumbles and falls over the officer on the ground. The group scatters. One protester attempts to help the victim. He's tackled to the ground by another officer.
China is positioning itself to lead the world in artificial intelligence. Surveillance technology is a key proving ground. Facial recognition, body scanning, and geo-tracking, matched with your personal data and online behaviour, will power the social credit system. Cities are already flush with cameras, around 200 million of them. What's changing is they're getting smarter.
Those to the left of liberalism might argue that the sanctity of this private property contradicts the other two defining characteristics of liberalism. Liberals do not see it that way, and instead claim that capitalism and liberalism achieve the most freedom and equality possible